They say family is everything. They say parents never choose between their children. But the day my father gave my 16-year-old sister 3 bedrooms, one for sleeping, one for her books, and one for her art, I learned a painful truth. Because when my son and I became homeless, he looked at us and said, "There's no room. My name is Daniel Harper, and this is the moment I went no contact forever." Story. I wasn't always struggling. I had a job, a small apartment, and dreams of giving my son a better life than I had. But life doesn't ask for permission before it falls apart. First, I lost my job. Then the bills piled up. Then the eviction notice came. I packed everything we owned into 2 suitcases. My son Noah was only 6 years old. He didn't understand why we were sleeping in the car some nights. He just kept asking one question. "Daddy, when are we going home?" I swallowed my pride and called the one person I thought would never turn me away. My father. He lived in a big house, a house with empty rooms, a house where my younger sister had more space than she could ever need. When I arrived tired and ashamed, he didn't hug me. He didn't ask how Noah was doing. He just crossed his arms and listened. I explained everything. The job loss, the eviction, the fear. Then I asked the hardest question of my life. "Can we stay for a while?" He didn't even hesitate. "There's no room," he said. I was stunned. I knew the house. I knew the rooms. I knew my sister had 3 bedrooms to herself. So I asked quietly, carefully, What if my son just sleeps in the cupboard under the stairs? Just for a little while. I'll figure something out." That's when my father looked me straight in the eyes and said the words that broke something inside me forever. "I won't turn my house into a shelter. You should have made better choices." No anger, no sadness, just cold judgment. My son was standing behind me. He heard everything. He tugged my hand and whispered, "It's okay, Daddy. I don't need much space." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about space. This was about worth. I picked up our bags. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just said, "You'll never see us again." And I meant it. Aftermath. We struggled. Shelters, couch surfing, long nights and longer prayers. But I rebuilt. I found work. Then stability. Then a small place that felt like a palace to us. Years passed. My father tried to call. Tried to explain? Tried to rewrite history. But some words can't be taken back. My son grew up knowing one thing for sure. Love isn't measured in square footage. It's measured in who opens the door. When you have nowhere else to go, cutting. Contact wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches, no final arguments, just silence. Days turned into months, months into years. My father never came looking for us. Not once. No birthday cards for Noah. No "Are you okay?" No apologies. And that hurt more than his words ever did. Because silence is a choice. Life didn't magically get better. There were nights Noah and I shared a single mattress on the floor. Mornings where I skipped meals so he could eat. Moments where I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't see. But I made one promise to myself. My son would never feel unwanted. I worked 2 jobs. Sometimes 3. I studied at night after Noah fell asleep. I learned skills. I failed. I tried again. Slowly, painfully. Things changed. A better job. A small apartment with 2 rooms. When Noah saw his own bedroom for the first time, he asked, "Is this really mine?" I said yes. He smiled and said something I will never forget. "It's bigger than the cupboard." I turned away so he wouldn't see me cry. The call I never expected. One evening, years later, my phone rang. It was my sister. Her voice was shaky. Dad's not well," she said. "He keeps asking about you, about Noah." I stayed quiet. Then she added something that shocked me. "He sold the house. The same house with no room." She told me the truth I had never known. After we left, my father became bitter. Angry. Lonely. My sister moved out.
The big room stayed empty.
And now, so did his life. "He wants to see you," she said softly. That night, Noah asked why I looked upset. I told him the truth. About his grandfather. About the past. About the door that was once closed. Noah listened quietly. Then he said, "You taught me that forgiveness is strong, but you also taught me that it's okay to protect yourself." I realized then I hadn't just survived. I had raised a better man than the one who raised me. The next morning, I stood outside the hospital. My hand hovered over the door handle. Inside was the man who once said, "There was no room for my child." The question wasn't whether he deserved forgiveness. The question was the hospital smelled like disinfectant and regret. I stood there longer than I should have, my hand on the door. my heart racing, not with fear, but with memories. Inside that room was the man who once told me there was no room for my child. I finally walked in. My father looked smaller, not weak, just empty. His eyes searched my face like he was afraid I might disappear again. Then he saw Noah. My son stood beside me, calm, confident, taller than I expected. My father's voice broke. "You've grown," he whispered. Noah nodded politely. He didn't hug him. He didn't smile. He waited. So did I. My father cleared his throat. "I made a mistake," he said. "I thought being strict would make you stronger. I didn't think you'd actually leave." I felt something snap inside me. "You didn't think?" I said quietly. "I was homeless, with a child." He looked down. I was proud. I didn't want the neighbors to think. I stopped him. "That's enough." Because suddenly I understood something important. His biggest regret wasn't losing us. It was losing control. Then Noah surprised everyone. He stepped forward and said, "Sir, when I was little, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought maybe I didn't deserve a room." The room went silent, but my dad showed me that love isn't about houses. It's about choosing people. My father started crying. Real tears. But Noah continued, "I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't mean you get to be part of our lives." I had never been more proud. I looked at my father and said the words I had carried for years. You taught me something without meaning to. You taught me who I never wanted to become." I told him about our life now, our home, our peace, and then I said, "We don't need anything from you. Not money, not apologies, not space." I stood up. "This is goodbye." We didn't go back. Not the next day. Not the next year. Because closure doesn't always mean another conversation. Sometimes it means choosing peace. Life became quiet in the best way. Noah grew into a thoughtful, confident young man. He laughed easily. He trusted people. He never doubted his worth. One evening, while helping him pack for college, I found a folded piece of paper, a drawing. It showed a small cupboard under the stairs. But this time the door was open. Light was pouring out. At the bottom he had written, "This is where my fear ended." I had to sit down. A few months later, I received a letter. My father had passed away. No demands, no guilt. Just one sentence he had written before the end. I should have opened the door. I didn't cry, because I had already mourned the father I needed. Years ago, there was no house, no money, but my son inherited something far greater. The certainty that love is action, that dignity matters, that no one, not even family, gets to decide your worth. After everything, people asked me questions. "Don't you regret it? He was still your father. What if you had stayed just a little longer?" They asked because they never slept in a car with a child. They never heard their son say, "I don't need much space." They never had to choose between self-respect and blood. No contact isn't hate.
It's not revenge.
It's not punishment. It's a boundary built from survival. It's choosing not to reopen a wound just because someone else feels uncomfortable. Seeing it heal. I didn't cut him off to hurt him. I cut him off so my son would never learn that love means begging. If you're a parent listening to this, your words will live longer than you. Your decisions will echo in your children's lives. One closed door can become a lifetime of doubt. One open door can become a memory they survive on. If you ever felt like there was no room for you in a house, in a family, in someone's heart, hear this. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with distance. Mine ended with peace. And peace is the room I finally gave my child. Like, after the story went public, something unexpected happened. Messages started coming in. From strangers, from parents, from grown children who had carried the same silence for years. I thought I was alone.
This feels like my life.
I wish someone had chosen me like that. I realized then, this wasn't just my story. It was a mirror. This story was never about rooms, or houses, or cupboards. It was about who we make space for. Some parents make room for pride. Some make room for appearances. Some make room for comfort. And some make room for their children, even when it costs them everything. I once promised my son, no matter how hard life gets, you will always have a place with me. Not a corner, not a temporary solution, a place. And I kept that promise. Every single day I once promised my son, no matter how hard life gets, you will always have a place with me. Not a corner, not a temporary solution, a place. And I kept that promise. Every single day, if someone you loved had nowhere to go, Would you open the door? Or would you say, there's no room? Because one answer builds a memory, the other builds a scar. Years ago, my father chose space over people. I chose differently. And that choice changed everything. People think the hardest choice was walking away. It wasn't. The hardest choice is the one I still make every day. To stay kind, without becoming weak. To remember,
Without reopening wounds.
to forgive, without forgetting what it cost. Because healing isn't one moment. It's a decision you repeat one night. Years later, Noah asked me something simple. Dad, if it happened again, would you still leave? I didn't answer right away. Then I said the truth. I wouldn't leave sooner. I would leave faster. He smiled. That's how I knew. The cycle had ended. My father left behind a lesson. I chose to leave behind a legacy. One where a child never wonders if there's room for them. One where love doesn't need explaining. One where doors open. Before fear moves in, if your child was watching you right now, what would they learn? That love has conditions. Or that it always makes room? Because one day, they'll repeat what you showed them. I was denied space, so I built a life where no one I love has to ask for it. There's a part of this story people rarely talk about. What happens after the anger fades? After the survival mode ends? After life becomes the normal? That's when the truth shows up quietly. Not as pain, but as clarity. I stopped waiting for an apology that fully understood the damage. A moment where the past suddenly made sense. A version of my father that chose differently. Because waiting keeps you tied to the door that never opened. Letting go is walking away without checking if it ever will. No contact gave me something rare. Silence without fear. Memories without shame. A future not shaped by someone else's pride. It gave my son a childhood that wasn't spent explaining pain, and that alone made every hard decision worth it. There is one line I carry with me now. If love has rules that hurt children, it isn't love. Simple, clear, uncomfortable for some people, but true. Maybe this story reminds you of someone. Maybe you were the child, waiting for space. Or maybe you're the adult, deciding what kind of space you'll create. Either way, the door is always in your hands. Once there was no room for my son. Now there's room for peace, room for honesty, room for a life that doesn't need permission to exist. There was a message I wrote many times. Late at night, phone in my hand, cursor blinking. A message to my father. I never sent it. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood he wouldn't hear it the way I needed him to. I would have told him. I didn't need a perfect parent. I just needed one who chose me when it mattered. I didn't want your house. I wanted your protection. I didn't walk away to punish you. I walked away because staying was teaching my son the wrong lesson. But some truths are too heavy for people who spent their lives avoiding them. One night, years later, Noah said something small, but it changed everything. He said, Dad, I never felt homeless with you. I asked him what he meant. He replied, we didn't always have a place, but I always had you. That was the moment I stopped questioning the past. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't erase memory. It shows up quietly, when your child laughs freely, when fear doesn't guide your choices, when you no longer rehearse old conversations in your head. That's when you know. The wound has closed. Some messages are never sent. Some doors are never opened. But sometimes, the life you build afterward says everything that needed to be said. For a long time, I never thought about my sister. Not because I hated her, but because pain has a way of narrowing your world to survival. Then one day she reached out again, not about Dad, not about forgiveness, about truth. She said something I never expected. I knew it was wrong. She told me about the rooms, how one slowly became storage, how another stayed locked most of the time. I didn't need all that space, she said. I just didn't know how to give it up. And Dad never asked me to. That's when I understood something important. Sometimes parents don't just fail their children. They teach one child to take and another to disappear. She told me she remembered Noah standing there, quiet, holding your hand. I still see his face, she whispered. It never leaves. That was her punishment. Not loneliness, not regret, memory. She asked me one question. Do you think if I had spoken up, things would have been different? I answered honestly, yes. And then I added, but it wasn't your job to be the parent. Silence filled the line. Sometimes forgiveness starts there, not with excuses, but with responsibility. We're not close, but we're honest. She knows why the door stayed closed. I know she lives with that day, in her own way. And that's enough. This story was never just about one man. It was about choices, made, avoided, or delayed. Every house has doors, but every family has moments where someone must decide who deserves space. If I could sit with her today, I would say, I don't blame you. You were a child too. You were navigating a house full of choices that weren't yours to make. I understand now how difficult it must have been to live in a space that felt so abundant and yet so hollow. Her choices weren't perfect. Mine weren't either, but I would tell her one thing clearly. You don't need to carry my pain. You just need to understand it. Families are messy. Blood doesn't fix neglect. Privilege doesn't equal fairness. And favoritism leaves scars that no room, no matter how large, can heal. I learned that day that love is not measured by bedrooms. It is measured by action. And I would tell my sister, your room never mattered. How you showed up for me and Noah, that mattered. We are not best friends. We are not inseparable, but we talk. We share small truths, and that is enough, because some bridges are not rebuilt with grand gestures. They are rebuilt with honesty, and with the courage to say, not every sibling relationship survives intact. Not every door reopens, but every child deserves space, and every parent deserves the chance to understand what they lost. Years have passed since that day. The day my father said, "There's no room." I don't think about him the way I used to. I don't hold on to anger or replay old conversations. I look at my son Noah. I see laughter. I see confidence. I see the man I promised I would protect. And I know I built something real. Life doesn't always give second chances. It doesn't always give apologies. Sometimes it gives empty rooms. Sometimes it gives the choice to walk away. And sometimes it gives you a child who shows you what really matters. No rooms, no wealth, no approval, just love and dignity. I never called him again. I never went back. I never asked for closure because I realized closure doesn't come from others. It comes from choosing peace for your family. I chose peace. I chose my son. I chose life. Some doors are closed forever. Some doors open, but only when you decide they should. This story isn't about hatred. It's about choosing who gets your love, your time, and your trust. You can survive rejection. You can survive indifference. But you cannot survive staying in a place that denies your worth. I walked away from my father. I walked toward my child. And in that choice, we found everything we ever needed. Like and subscribe.